All right. Welcome. We are in episode 8. We got Renae Mansfield here. Welcome to TimTalk.
Thank you.
All right. So just to get started here, if this is your first time watching, I think it's only on YouTube, but you can throw in your comments. We'll read them whenever we have like a little break in the action and stuff like that. So Renae, you have a really interesting backstory, which I actually don't know much of. I mean, we've been hanging out here for the last like hour and a half or so, but I think I have so many things I want to get to with you, but I want to make sure, I'm going to try to get to all of it. So let's start with your background, how you got into firefighting, and yeah, why did you choose this course? I mean, it's an interesting career path to take.
Yeah, it's a loaded question.
Okay.
I'll try to give you the cliff notes. Originally, I'm from Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
I moved.
Oh, yeah, you're a
here.
Bills fan?
Of course, I'm a Bills fan.
Eesh.
It's in my blood.
Okay. Okay. God. I didn't really we're going to cut it right here. No.
Should I kick you out now? But yeah, I moved here about just over 10 years ago, about 11 years ago. So yeah, interesting enough, I kind of, I've always been interested in firefighting and paramedicine, emergency medicine of that nature. In Buffalo, Western New York, a lot of things are volunteer. So
Okay.
actually, when I was living out there, I was going to college for emergency medicine, neurosurgery, things of that nature. And I was going to join a volunteer fire department, and they were going to pay for me to become a paramedic. So things did not end up working out that way.
Okay.
So to fast forward, I ended up, when I did move here, because I was so naive, I didn't know anything about Massachusetts firefighting, civil service. I moved to Bridgewater, went to the Bridgewater Fire Department, asked how to become a firefighter. They asked me if I was an if they asked me if I was a paramedic, I said no. They asked me if I was an EMT, I said no. And they said, okay, go learn about the civil service and we'll see you in a few years. And
is it required to be an EMT?
No, not everywhere, but
Okay.
a lot of Massachusetts, it is required to at least be an EMT. And then a lot of them, they do require paramedic. Right now, it's just very difficult to become.
Wow. So paramedic is often, so wow, that's really interesting. So my, I haven't told you this yet, but my old man was a firefighter in Quincy for, I think like 19 years. And which is way back when, and he was the first EMT on the Quincy Fire Department.
Oh, wow.
May have been I remember him saying, it may have been Massachusetts, but let's just say Quincy for now, because I know at least that's definitely true. But that was like right in the beginning of that wave, way before it was like an expectation. Like they were two very different roles, and now
Yeah,
you guys are expected to at least be an EMT, if not paramedic, which is
a lot
pretty
of departments.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's getting more and more difficult to find members. So now a lot of departments that do require paramedics,
Yeah.
they are actually paying for EMTs and then paying for paramedics. So they're paying for you to go to these schools. So just to kind of, get bodies in the door.
Right.
So you'll go through the civil service if they are a civil service department. Not all departments are civil service.
Okay.
So it's a process, so.
That's interesting. Okay, sorry. Let's get back to your story then. So you come in here, they tell you go learn some crap and come back.
Yeah.
And
So
you do what?
I basically that's what I did. So when I first moved here, I had $400 to my name. I started working at Target because I knew that I could easily get a job there.
Mm-hmm.
Put myself through EMT school, put myself through paramedic school. As soon as I became a paramedic, I basically got on a fire department and kind of just went through the motions in that. So that's kind of how it all started. And then I was doing the band stuff on the side. So it's kind of how I mixed and matched my friend.
So this is a pretty cool backdrop. Yeah. So Renae has her own band, the Renae and Band. And actually that's where we met.
Yes.
We met at a mutual friend's party, which I don't remember all of because I had Cutwaters and didn't know about Cutwaters back then. And but that's actually where we met, and we got to know about each other, which led to this, which is awesome because this is a new thing that you're doing with Wayward Consulting, right?
Right.
Or consulting.
Wayward Wellness Coaching. Yes.
Wayward Wellness Coaching. Thank you. So okay, without jumping around too much, which I tend to do. Let's stay on the track here. So
Right.
now you have your first job, and
Right.
you're exposed to this. Now you must have, from your previous experience and the folks that you've worked with prior to that, you must at least have an understanding of, or like a basic expectation of what the job's going to be, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was about 10 years between being a paramedic and on the fire department.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was, around a decade that I have the first responder experience.
Mhm.
So, being a paramedic, also on the EMS side. So I was also working for private EMS companies. So
Right.
it's kind of full gamut of getting EMS and the fire department. So which are two different animals in itself,
Mhm.
right? So you have a corporation that really is out to gain money.
Right.
And then you have the civil servant that, you're not really allowed to make money, but then you're also, finding the fine line of politics over people.
And there's so much politics in your world,
Right.
which is, I've only had one other episode where we got into politics, but this is going to be, for me anyway, fun. Maybe, I mean, getting into like how the relationship with like unions and like, whether you're in serving on as police or fire or like one of those private EMS type of companies, those agencies, all three of those are different animals that have a lot of similarities, but also they're unique and they have their different challenges, right?
Right.
And you now work with all three of them.
Yeah. Well, except for, yes, because the program is now working with police. So
Yeah.
you have, at the end of the day, a chief kind of has to be a politician, right? Because they're petitioning on behalf of needing to get funds in the
Mhm.
budget and on behalf of the firefighters or, members of the police for the town, but also to the townspeople. And it's just you have to understand when you have to take a step back and realize all of the pieces that are moving, right? So when you talk about wellness, you have to just understand the stressors of burnout.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of conversations, and we can go to obviously in depth of all these
Yeah.
things, but as I was developing this program, I'm talking to first responders at the boots on the ground level, the mid-level like captains, lieutenants, sergeants, and then also the higher levels of, what we call the white shirts and, the chiefs and the deputies. And there's all different levels of the burnout. So you have to understand that the burnout is going to come from the stressors of the top down and the bottom up, in the middle from the top and the bottom,
Yep.
squeezing the sandwich. So you can't just put blame on any one number of things, because you're just going to, you can't, it's just hard, because at the end of the day, you do have to have a full spectrum understanding.
Right. And just to start, let's start trying to break this up to make it a bit more tangible for the audience then. So let me try my best as an outsider, and you correct me where I'm wrong. So everybody that's working in this field, regardless of what you're doing, has a lot of trauma that they deal with. Like trauma, so if anyone has had a rescue experience, it typically, for a normal person that's not part of your world, is a unforgettable experience. If you're like we're going to talk about that fire in Fall River at some point too, that the assisted living that just
Right.
happened a few months ago, or actually just 2 months ago, I think. We'll talk about that. Gabriel House, I think it was called, something like that. And we'll be talking about that. But like, when you have people who are in a situation like that, and they're on like the second story, and they're coughing out of the side of the window, they think they're going to die. They're convinced they're going to die, and they are saved by somebody, saved by a firefighter, because they use ladders in that rescue. It is an unforgettable. I was talking to somebody actually yesterday, and I have such a terrible memory. I can't remember who it was. And she told me that she had locked her, Chris, yeah. But she, once when she was younger, she locked her dog in her bathroom, which is, of course, very trivial compared to a house fire. But still, for her, she was going through
her emergency.
It's emergency. They came in, they busted the door down in obviously a very safe way. It wasn't like the place was on fire or anything. And they got her back with her animal, but she never forgot that. I was telling her about this the show that we're going to do. And it's like, these are unforgettable moments for people. And when we look at, generally speaking, fire, police, EMS, we just see the end result and don't see what's behind it. You have unions that are pushing for like staffing, right? Because my understanding is staffing, especially in fire, is way under where there's supposed to be like 4 firefighters per ladder.
Yeah,
And
it's
we're looking
gets
at like a
messy.
2 per ladder, typically, sometimes even less than that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like 1 to 3.
If you can even staff the ladder, yeah.
So, which I think was one of the big pushbacks for Fall River. But like the unions are pushing for salaries, they're pushing for staffing, but they're not touching any of the shit that you're dealing with here. Like generally speaking, like mental health stuff is not a high priority.
Right.
And I think you can say the same thing in like folks that I know that are in police or even in the military. Like there's a lot of this there's a lot of expectations and concerns with the mental health side that we'll get into. And then on the other side, what you're talking about is there's a political place for the chiefs, right? Because they're not part of the union. They're
Right.
generally speaking, they're not going to be part of the union. You're going to have other members that are probably typically more frontline people or people with more experience that have been on the force for a while that are going to be the union reps locally. Is that typically how it goes?
Yeah.
Okay. So now the negotiation goes between, what is it, the city, the chief, and the union? Or is it just the chief and the union usually?
Yeah, so it's like you have the union and then you elect the union board,
Mhm.
right? And so then you elect specific members to go to do the negotiations. So when you're coming up to a contract, and then they then are the ones that are speaking on behalf of the union that go and present with the chief and the selectmen or the town board, whomever the town calls it. And
Mhm.
then that's the negotiation team that is then doing the contract of whomever and whatever you are negotiating at that time.
And they come up with how many firefighters we can have in
Yeah,
this city.
basically
or-
whatever the budget is going to sustain. So the the benefits, the salaries, the amount that you're going to have, it's usually like per crew members, right?
Yeah.
So like usually it's running based off of like the department that I was at. So we'll run 6 people. We wanted 8 people, but we won't fall below 5 people.
Mhm.
Therefore, that's where forces and or mandates, sometimes nurses use that as like mandates, they'll say, we say forces. So that means the previous crew will be forced into the next shift
Okay.
and could be potentially forced into the following shift. So that's where you'll find that members will be forced from a 24 into a potentially 36 or a 48. So that's where you'll find the longer shifts.
So why is there pushback when it comes to staffing? Like I understand obviously budgeting and salary is a big concern. But if you're in a situation where you know you need to have four firefighters per ladder, for instance, minimum, and you're not even close to that, and then you have things that happen like what happened in Fall River, and there's many cases like that. Why is there pushback is it just about money? Is it just salary?
I mean, I've never been at the top, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what those conversations look like
Yeah.
between the chief and the town,
Mm.
but from my perspective, it's really what it comes down to, right? They don't want to pay to have more staff. But at the end of the day, then you're just paying for overtime.
Mhm.
So what are we paying for? You're paying for the burnout of your employees and then their time and a half,
Right.
or you're just taking all that time and a half and adding one more new person,
Right.
so you're paying in some way, right?
Mhm.
So either way, you're still paying.
Okay, so let's get into where you step in. Now, I think probably before we get into, I mean, there's no better way to give an example of the burnout you're talking about, I think, than for you to share your story.
Sure.
Ready?
Sure.
Let's do it. So tell me, so I've read certain things about you. I don't know any of the details yet. I've read that you feel like you were at the point where you're sacrificing your life potentially, that you've had several surgeries. Obviously, I think most people in your position probably would have been like, screw this, I'm out of here. And I'm sure a lot of people have done that and have just left that sector and joined some other industry because they were done with the situation. But if you could bring us in on your personal experience and the culture that you experienced, that would be pretty great.
Right. So a few years ago, really at the height of COVID, I want to say maybe 2021 or so, I was starting to experience some severe burnout. I remember actually specifically having a conversation with a captain that I was close to. He was my immediate captain, just saying how I was having a lot of burnout. And we were having a pretty frank conversation. And he's like, what do you think that you should do to, mitigate this? And I was like, I don't know, maybe go into wildland firefighting or something of that nature. I just didn't know what I should do. And so he was really encouraging me to maybe look at different outlets or something of that nature. And so I was actually starting to pursue things like just different outlets of firefighting. And I thought maybe I was going to be starting to leave that specific department because I just thought it was EMS that maybe I was burning out.
Like the nature of the job?
The nature
How do you
of
know
that
you were
specific job.
experiencing burnout?
So I was just starting to get kind of irritable. Like I was exhibiting just signs of, I hated all of the calls, especially during like the tail end of COVID starting to open up a little more.
Yeah.
The private EMS company that was usually doing a lot of the basic calls, like with the just like the basic doctor visit calls that usually happens, pulled out of the town I was working for. So what usually started to happen was like nursing homes and stuff like that were calling if they couldn't get a ride for their patient to go to their doctor's office. They were just calling 911. So it was an overload to the system.
Okay.
The system is broken.
Yeah.
So instead of just like having some sort of
Can you
capability,
guys respond to that? I mean,
we had to, because like the joke is bad labs, right? So the person has bad labs, they're supposed to see their doctor, but they can't take a chair car or a regular car.
yeah.
They need to take like an ambulance
Mhm.
because they need a stretcher, but there's no private ambulance that was doing it at that time around COVID. So they just had to call 911 because then they knew
And then
that
you
they
got
were
dispatched there.
right. So then
Wow.
the fire department would have to go take them to the hospital because they knew that eventually they were going to see their doctor. The system was just broken and is still broken.
Yeah.
Which is some of the things that you're probably exposing through all of this.
Absolutely.
Shit.
That's the whole point. Yeah.
Right. So that aspect was just weighing very heavily on the local fire departments, who has one or two, maybe two ambulances on top of the 911 calls that are serious that we're doing, and the hospitals that just are inundated of just these calls.
Okay.
So that was getting very frustrating, on top of the politics, on top of everything else. And then we were being forced for shifts. I mean, we were working anywhere between 60 to 80-hour weeks on top
Regularly?
of the stuff that I was doing, like with the band, on top of just like stressors with life. And so it was just a lot. My
Okay.
body was just tired. I was mentally tired. And I was just leaning a little bit more on alcohol than I shouldn't have. And I was exhibiting just exhaustion.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get out of an environment where I was being forced to work when I didn't want to, being forced into politics I didn't want to have to deal with,
Yep.
and being forced to do these calls that I was like, we shouldn't be going to these calls and no one's doing anything to fix it. And I'm being told I'm bitching, and I don't want to be told I'm bitching.
Okay.
Like,
this is where the suck it up type of talk comes in?
Right. Like, stop bitching about it. Just do your job.
Yep.
But it's like, but that's what's causing me to burn out.
Right.
So like, why is no one doing anything about this? I want to do something about this, but I'm being told I'm bitching. So like, I just wanted to remove myself from that situation. So that's why I wanted to just leave. And I thought wildland firefighting was something that interested me. So anyway, I started to look into that. The universe had different, like plans. So anyway, fast forward to a few months later, I actually developed like hip pain. I thought it was my hip. It ended up being my back. And I noticed it kind of like on a fire call, my whole left leg went numb.
Okay. It was
And
like tendon stuff then.
it ended up being, I heard, a herniated disc.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, wow, okay, this is not good, when my whole left leg went numb, like on just a very routine fire call.
Right.
But it was after I had noticed it when I was deadlifting, because at the time I was really into working out and deadlifting. And so when it exacerbated that bad, I was like, okay, this isn't my hip. This has to be my back.
Right,
So
right.
Anyway, I started getting that checked out. And so 5 days later, this is when the cascading of shit just started to happen.
Okay.
And I was like, this is when like God was like, okay, I have different plans for you. So if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to start attacking your body. Right.
Okay.
So, so 5 days later, I ended up, I thought that I was taking too much naproxen. Long story short, ended up having an acute bowel obstruction. So random, completely out of the ordinary. I ended up having to get emergency surgery.
Yeah.
And then I was out of commission for like 12 weeks. So this is when I started to notice that there was a lot of betrayal from the department. So up until then, I thought my burnout was just from overworking.
Well, yeah, maybe you're annoyed with some of the parts. You're putting in extra hours, so you could
Right.
blame that on the job. Maybe the disc thing was more towards workout, but obviously you're also straining. I imagine you didn't mention this, but I imagine you're not getting great sleep throughout this process.
Oh, absolutely not.
When you're drinking and you're compensating for things, that I've been there myself.
And working 24 is like just nonstop.
Right. And then you get to, and then you have the surgery. And then, so a lot of this could be potentially explained in a myriad of ways. But now, where does the clash with your profession come?
This is when I started to realize, so up until this point, I will also mention, as I was starting to feel this burnout, I was starting to also withdraw from social aspects at the fire station.
Okay.
Hindsight's 2020. I didn't realize that I was withdrawing as much as I was.
Okay.
I was starting to isolate myself. So we had like private rooms as well. So like I used to be more, I know we were talking about this earlier, I'm more introverted. But at the firehouse, we're like a crew of like 5 to 6, maybe 7. And like I enjoyed training. I enjoyed hanging out with the guys. I was the first and only female. But I enjoyed my group, and I enjoyed hanging out. We joked around a lot, and it was like a little family.
Yeah.
And I realized that I started to not want to hang out anymore. I didn't like to be around in the social gatherings. I didn't like to train. I found myself on my phone a lot, and I don't like to be on my phone a lot.
Yeah.
So when I think back to it, I was starting to isolate myself a lot more at the fire station. I was starting to get a lot more negative about things. I wasn't joking around and stuff like that. So, and then I noticed too that like they started to like talk behind my back a little bit more. And there's parts of the station where you could almost hear, like you could be in another room and you could hear through the air ducts.
Yeah.
Where people are talking about you, and I could hear them bitching about me. And I was just like, and one time I actually called them out like with it, and he like to my face like was like, well, you said blah 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 blah, because of like something that I was like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, I did say that, because like I can't even remember. I was like, but you were supposed to have my back, and you're a union representative, and that was like between you, me, and the chief. So of course I said that, because you're the, like it was like, and then you went and bitched about me with other people when you were the union representative in that manner. So it was like, that's where the betrayal was starting to happen.
Okay.
And then the surgery happened. So, but I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together. So then the surgery happened. And right before then, I even was going to remove myself from the union, because there was going to be someone that was going to become potentially the union president that I was starting to clash with. And he had made some comments that I just didn't, like he had just become a paramedic. I had already been a paramedic for like 8 years. And like, he made some comments that like diminished my authority. Not that I was ever trying to over authoritate.
Yeah, but emasculating type of comments.
Right. And it was just like, okay, dude, like your ticket's still fucking wet. And like, you're going to
right. Like you haven't seen anything yet.
Right.
Like,
so,
yeah.
Anyway, when the surgery happened, it was like, this is where the people pleasing comes in, right?
Okay.
I was like still on Dilaudid, and my immediate thought, I'm so ingrained, was to like immediately text and be like, this is what's happening, blah, 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 blah. And like, my boyfriend's like, why are you even texting? Like, you just almost died. You went septic, and like,
oh, damn.
What is going on with your brain right now?
Mm-hmm.
And so like, the first things that they even think of is to like, be like, well, what are you going to do about your sick time? Like, it wasn't concern. It wasn't like, don't even worry about what's going on.
Right.
Like, just heal.
Oh,
like,
man.
the first thing that came out of their mouth was like, why is the chief talking about us giving away like a sick bank? Like, that was what the union's response was. And I was like, my boyfriend's like, put your fucking phone down. Like,
yeah,
you're an hour out of surgery on Dilaudid.
This is not healthy for you to be focused on this right now. Absolutely right.
And so like, but that was the moment where
that's always like whenever my employees have stuff going on, whether it's private or whatever it is, it's the first thing I always think of is to say that, like, this is concerning one of your family members, or this is your health. I was like, this place is here for you. Don't worry. Go figure out your crap. Once you have it figured out, then let me know what your situation is. But you know, it's like when it comes to life and death, whether it's for you or a family member, that's way more important than the job. It has to be, because you can't work any job if your brain isn't in the game, if your brain is elsewhere, if you're thinking about something else, or you just went through a loss, for instance. So we have like, time off for when a loved one passes away or something like that. It's like you need time to process things and to provide, to have to mourn, to be human. And that's wild. Yeah. And I think it's different too, I imagine, because, I am in an office world. You're not. So the whole idea of suck it up probably exists more in this culture than it does in most at this point, right? Yeah. I mean, and you had mentioned, so you're the only woman that was serving there too. Did that ever seem to come up as a differentiator at all, or did they treat you like one of the guys? Or?
Well, it's funny that so I actually thought that it would be a problem.
Yeah.
So at my very first department, I thought it would be a problem there because there was a lot of older guys. It was never a problem.
Awesome.
If anything,
that's the sense I got, was that they were treating you like just one of not differently at all.
In the first department, it was like, I actually sometimes regretted leaving it just because, and I don't regret it because everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they were awesome. And like, if anything, the older guys were the ones that like took me under their wing. And it was almost like, as soon as you prove yourself, doesn't matter who you are, if you prove yourself, they know that you can do the job.
Right. Which is very important in a place like that.
Yeah.
Because they need to know they can depend on you too. Because again, you guys are supposed to have each other's backs.
Right.
And often you're dealing with life and death situations.
Right. And then when I moved to the other department, which I was sold to the idea that it was progressive, it's a young department, it's moving forward.
Okay.
And it was a lot of it was like my age. And I thought that it would be even better than the other department. And I left for, a myriad of reasons, but it was the complete opposite. It was more like a frat house, to be honest. Like,
okay.
It was crazy,
so very different camaraderie there. You're not treated.
Yeah, it was almost like the first department, you're just your group was a group.
Yep.
If
there's only a few of you there too, so you have to be bonded.
The other, there was like 12 to 16 like a shift, but it was like if someone was have a baby, like everyone's invited to the shower, like someone's getting like it was just all. It was communal,
right.
And it just felt really like a firehouse. Like it was, and the other department, it was just like, it was almost like I had to, like, I was just like, looked at weird if I was like, why why do I have to feel like I have to be asked to be invited? And then it was like weird if I was asked to be invited. Like, I don't really know how to explain it because, yeah, it was just weird. And then it was just like, it was just weird. And it was the complete opposite. And then I was almost like that strange kid that was like, why is no one inviting me? You know, like it was like the one that's always last picked for dodgeball.
Right.
And then no one wanted around, you know? Like,
So so now we're getting probably closer to you hanging up the boots at this point, right?
right. So
what led to that decision?
I was basically on light duty for the rest of my career
Wow,
at that
okay.
point, because then it was
Because of the injury?
So I had the injury and then I had the
I mean, the
emergency
surgery.
surgery.
Yeah.
So that was 12
Did you not
weeks.
recover, or were you just kind of typecast into a...
No, I really just never recovered because then I
Okay.
had another surgery. And
Okay.
then, so I had that emergency surgery. I actually recovered from that and the herniated disc.
Mhm.
I was scheduled to do my PAT again. I was feeling the physical abilities test that
Mhm.
you have to do to prove that you can go back on the job.
Yep.
3 days prior, before I was supposed to take that, I noticed that I had like some weird bubble at the incision site from the emergency surgery.
Oh, wow.
It ended up being 3 herniated, like incisional hernias from
Okay.
the incisional
Yeah.
site.
Yeah.
And so they were like, well, you can't go back to work until that's fixed.
Right.
So then I had to get another surgery. But because everything was like a charcuterie board in there from everything,
Yeah.
that surgeon was like, I don't even want you to lift a coffee cup for like 8 to 10 weeks because I don't want that to happen again.
Right.
So that was another 8 to 10 weeks that I had to do that. So
Okay.
because I couldn't even do anything, that exacerbated the herniated discs that I had just fixed. And then because of that, I ended up seeing like a chiropractor. And this isn't a knock on chiropractors. It's just this particular chiropractor. I still believe in the power of chiropractors. But this specific one did not listen to me. Anyway, he ended up worsening one of the not very bad herniated discs that I had.
Okay.
So that ended up not only herniating, but rupturing.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just went so much worse than everything else. So
Wow.
then I actually lost function of my right leg and then like complete numbness in my left leg. This just cascaded everything.
Holy
so
shit.
then,
Do you still have like pieces of this still, or
no,
you
so
were able
that's
to recover? Okay.
led to my final surgery, which ended up being back surgery.
Okay.
Where they didn't know that it was ruptured, but then that's when they went in and they noticed that the disc
They
was
did like
actually
a fusing?
ruptured. No,
Okay,
they
good.
ended up only having, it was a 30% rupture. So
Good.
they were able to remove, it's a discectomy, I think is what they call it.
Yeah.
They removed 30%. And I am doing so much better. It was about a year and a few months
And
ago.
after that, did that like disqualify you from duty going forward? At that point?
No.
Oh,
So it wouldn't have been. Okay. So this is leading up to that.
yeah.
This was just before I had my surgery. This is what ended up happening. So all of these physical ailments happened around the same time. My brain kept compromising and saying, I can go back to work. It's going to be fine. But then the other part of my brain was, no, you are so burnt out from this job. You need to leave. There's a different path. You need to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would, go back and be like, but no, I can do both. I can
Right.
do both.
Right.
And then something as small as like, I got an ulcer on my eye. Right. And I was like, all right, no, I need to just leave. I need to make the decision.
Yeah.
And so I finally did. It was just before my back surgery was scheduled. And I finally made the decision. And so I ended up leaving entirely under the name of just, I needed to fix my back. I wanted to take a year off. I am technically still in the civil service, so I have 5 years to really decide and I can go back. But I really just wanted to get my back better and really just everything better.
It's interesting, the story that you have here, because I think, I was expecting, more of the trauma and burnout stuff coming from direct on the job interactions and stuff like that. So it's interesting, like how much, I mean, it just shows you how much the politics or just the relationships, it plays a huge role with you, or within the industry. So you decided that you want to tackle this, and I wonder if that's unique to you, or like, so since you've started this, have you found that a lot of people have similar experiences to you?
Yes.
Or like, so my preconceived notion, because so where I come from is, I look at it like, because I remember when, again, I'll go back to my dad. When I was growing up, I remember when his first day as an EMT, they went up to a house, and whoever was in the lead of that went up to the house, and he turns back and he goes, "Debona, come up here." And so he comes up and he sees a woman who shoves a blue baby into his arms, because he was the only one that had any kind of training. Now he's like a 19-year-old kid getting a completely blue baby put into his arms. And I think he said, and it's different. And I talked about this a little bit at the end of last episode, because and the person I was talking about who works in hospitals, he's like, it's so different for us because we're there when it happens. Like when chest compressions need to be done, we're there in the moment. Whereas first responders are often going to be 10, 15 minutes. And because I think he said out of his 19 years in service, I think he saved like 2 people with those type of efforts. And but I remember he had other things, like he had like car accident victims where there were fires and having like literally skin melted into him and his gloves and stuff like that. And I just remember him like always coughing up into the sink and stuff. And I look at other things like the police suicide rate. And I mean, really across all, I mean, police is certainly, I think police is like twice the suicide rate as firefighters, 3 times what EMS agency folks are experiencing, but still all 3 massively higher than what you would expect from anyone who does not work in that industry. So there's certainly a lot of trauma that is received by you folks, like just in the normal job. In addition, so that's where I was expecting like a lot of like the folks that, so it's interesting how much this can also play a role, like the political side of it.
Right. And this is how it is hidden, right?
Yeah.
I'm attributing all of my burnout to just all of this physical shit.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I fully left and really could reflect on, wow, this is actually what happened. But it took me actually removing myself from the situation to reflect and say, no, this is the cause of what actually forced me to leave. I left because of the betrayal, burnout, not because my back is injured. I could have just completely recovered from all these. I am recovered from all of these physical
and you said
ailments.
You have time. You could go back.
And I could go back right now. But now knowing what actually caused my burnout, I'm like, and that's why I started my program. And you asked me, have I noticed that other people have dealt with the same issues?
Yeah.
Yes, that's why I came back and did this, because when I finally realized what the burnout's root cause was, is when I realized why I needed to come back into this. So rewinding back until all of this stuff, when I was on light duty for about, basically 1.5 years of my last couple years of my career, is when it really started to settle in that I am being like mentally tortured with all of this stuff. That's what the burnout was, because I had to sit next to a chief that is just very toxic, and that is the cause of what's going on. And that's why I developed this program that's more leadership driven, because if the leadership at the top doesn't know how to communicate,
the whole thing's ruined.
Everything falls apart.
Right.
And that's why everyone is burnt out at the bottom. It's not because of the PTSD. And honestly,
and it's going to be hard, because you must have thought it was you at first, right? I imagine most people, when they get into those situations, they blame themselves. Maybe I can't hack it. This is what everyone deals with.
And that's what we're told.
This is normal.
Suck it up. Like if you can't deal with it, maybe you're not.
I got a whole thing to jump in on that, but go, finish your thought.
But that's what you're told. Like if you can't handle it, then you're not meant for it, right?
Yeah.
So it's that whole mentality, and the whole mentality too, like this is brotherhood, I have your back. And then what happens when you have that mentality that this is my brotherhood, and then that's the ultimate betrayal, you know, like this isn't just my boyfriend cheated on me, which is bad, right? Like if your significant other cheats on you,
right?
But this is something completely different. If you have a group of people that is supposed to have your back when there's life or death situations, and you spend copious amount of time with them, you are literally eating, breathing, sleeping around these people, and then all of a sudden they betray you. That is like a different type of trust and betrayal.
Right. But I mean, like the analogy you're making is similar. I mean, we've all been through probably toxic relationships where, you know, the suck it up thing goes beyond just what you experience on the force. You also have, you know, like, you know, gaslighting in just little personal relationships and stuff like that, whether it's friends, family, significant others. I mean, I think everyone's experienced that. And when they realize like, oh my God, it hasn't been me, it's been this person the whole time. It's like, you just have this epiphany, like, this is over. I need to end this relationship and stuff like that and move on or whatever it is. And but I imagine it hits very different. Like, so I was talking to somebody just recently too about the military, and there's certain similarities you can make. So there's a lot of this, you know, I saw this thing, I think yesterday, the FBI director was being questioned about what happened with Charlie Kirk last week. And they were talking about like what can be done. He's like, you know, listen, whatever it is that we can do, we want to do, but it's hard to figure out what we need to do. And I want to scream like mental health, like it's the consistent piece of everything, regardless of how you feel about guns or left versus right or all this other crap. The common denominator is almost always mental health. And when you're in a position like whether it's military, police, fire, you know, and again, I'm speaking from the outside here, but here's what I see happening. I see that there is technically mental health options. It is systemically shunned from the top down and even from peers. There's a clear indication that if you say you need this, it can put a mark on your record. The folks may want to say, hey, like this person might not be appropriate for the job. And so the unions probably don't want benefits like that to go through because it could lead to staffing issues. And people don't want to speak up because that could also put a mark on them and start changing things. And the reality is that everybody probably could benefit like from counseling services, period. Like I'm sure a lot of people, I don't care if you're like me and you have a desk job and you just need 1 hour of your week to scream so that you don't go off on a random person at your work and make an ass out of yourself. But there's probably people that are like first responders who are going to lose it in a very inappropriate way on the scene or something like that because they haven't had this. And maybe there are certain people that shouldn't be first responders because of this. And that makes it like, I feel like there should be so much more. If like someone put a blue baby in my hands and I'm not getting any kind of like counseling after that, or at least someone checking in to say, bro, like let's chill, let's you know, you can maybe take a day off to process what just happened. You know, it's your first day, you're a kid basically yourself, and you just went through this is going to be kind of tough to process. Like there should be, and I know they have certain things, like if like a police officer fires has a discharge of their firearm, there will be like a mandatory, like you have the rest of X amount of time off. There will be like a check-in. But there needs to be so much more. It should be like, in my estimation, mandatory for there to be check-ins so that we can make sure that people are mentally healthy that are out there, and it shouldn't be a mark against you.
Right. There's so much to unpack.
I know.
Right?
I'm sorry. I just had to hit the soapbox because that is what pisses me off. So, like the fact that there are still industries that are looking at mental health like a weakness is insane to me, because like I thought that shit would change after Columbine, and I was in high school when that happened. That was what we're at next year will be, what, 30 years? I think it was like 96.
Yeah, and you're an old fuck.
Yeah, I am. But like I would think by the time I became an old fuck, I would have seen some change, but we don't see, if anything, we're seeing cuts right now in like essential mental health services. So like things that happened like last week and like how what we've seen so many things like this, and I'm honestly surprised we haven't seen more shit like this because it's the issue is not being addressed.
So a lot of unpacking
ahead.
here. So I will say this: there has been some changes, and there has been acknowledgments. Whether they're the proper changes is a different story, right? I will say also that ironically, law enforcement tends to be like, especially when I've been talking to different chiefs and police side, tends to be more receptive in really anything. Like they just want to find a way to fix whatever is broken.
And when you say they, are you saying unions or leadership or both?
Just leadership of the law enforcement in general. Mostly whom I've been talking to have been chiefs and deputies.
Okay.
And they just, I don't know if it's because they're more scrutinized right now in our climate of the culture.
Yep.
But they tend to be a little bit more receptive just to like, we understand there's a problem.
Yeah.
We know there's a lot of, police suicide right now.
Oh, yeah. I think we are averaging like 10 a year in Massachusetts alone right now.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
It is insane.
Like even in where like my where my kids go to school, I mean, I've seen in the last 10 years, I think at least 2, just and it's a little town.
Yeah.
In east of Massachusetts. It's oh man, it's terrible. And so I'm glad that, if there's anywhere to start, it would be police. But I mean, I think it's clear indications all 3 of those sectors need to be hit hard.
So it's great that they're acknowledging and they want to, and they're receptive. The fire side tends to be a little harder to like break. And I don't know if they're so strong in their unions that they just don't, I don't know what it is. And if they're still so stuck in that like suck it up culture, or if they're still stuck in the brotherhood. And
I think some of the unions might be just antiquated without like, it's a pivot shift to, because unions in the fire, I feel like have always been about staffing and salary. Yeah. Like that's typically their 2-pronged focus. Whereas other crap, not that they don't care about the other's crap or that health doesn't matter, but the part that we're talking about, the part that you're addressing, the burnout part, there should clearly be, a budget allocation specifically for burnout, counseling,
right?
All, there needs to be that needs to be maybe not the majority, but it has to be in those, not just those conversations, but like I imagine they're in those conversations and eventually they get negotiated out of the deal.
Well, which leads to another portion of the issue, right? So like, well, what are we addressing? What wellness is?
Yeah.
So is wellness, when you think of wellness in this industry, the majority of people just think of PTSD, right? So,
right. Yeah.
But that's not really the root cause of the burnout. Like,
which I'm shocked by, but.
Right. Because when you really think about it, okay, it sounds really callous, but we're just a different breed. Okay. I don't know why or how, but it's
the way you guys are programmed, easy. You can manage this
right.
stuff.
It's just, I hate to say it, but it is kind of like an adrenaline rush, right? Like I can think of a lot of times where there's like calls that are just gruesome. Like I can think of a call where there's like brains on the sidewalk.
Like, are you looking forward to these calls?
No.
But you get into this for a reason. Like you don't get into this to sit at a desk.
Right. Like it's sad. Oh my God, it makes me sound like a crazy person, but like, obviously it's sad, but at the same time, I can still go eat mac and cheese. Like, like it doesn't.
I can tell you the same thing happens on the med side, because the thing too is like, we have to make, and I'm not a clinician, but like, I know a lot of my clinicians very well, and they make jokes about things that that you and I would be like, whoa, that seems so callous, like you're saying. But sometimes it's a very healthy way to compensate for the things that you're exposed to see. Sometimes it's just part of your makeup and stuff like that. Because if you're going to know that you're going to see crap like this, you need to be made out of something that allows you to do that.
And there's certain things that do affect you in different ways. So like what might affect you and cause you PTSD
Mhm.
might not be the same way. So like,
Absolutely
for
true.
example, something that sticks with me, the calls that stick with me personally,
Yeah.
is when I see the family super upset.
Yep.
So the specific patient in general, like a dead person, it doesn't affect me as much,
Mm.
but seeing the family weeping, that, man, that breaks me.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
like, that specifically has stuck with me for every call where I've had to see the family breaking, especially when I've had to go back to a call and break the news to the people. Like
Yeah.
that wrecks me.
Mm.
So like the specific call where like we've done a DOA or something of that nature, or had to do CPR and we didn't rescue the person, those things don't stick with me as much as the issue with the family.
Right.
So, but that might be the opposite for my partner, you know?
Exactly right. But don't you still think that that would indicate, so like how you're saying, different trauma for different folks, that there still should be some kind of a check-in?
Right. So there's still something that's like this, the critical incident management, where there's usually a team. So that unpacks other things. So a big portion of it is where usually you'll have a team come in, whether it's peer support within your own group, or therapists that are coming in. And the ideal situation is that there's peer support that are specifically trained, and therapists that are trained for first responders that come in and help those people that just happen to, in a critical incident. What doesn't usually happen is follow-up. So that's a huge missing piece, something that you were kind of, touching on. And so it's something that I integrated after doing a lot of market research with talking with different first responders in my own experience, that I integrated into my own program, which is why it's over a course of a year, because follow-up is so important. And I feel like
it
that's
has to be
the missing
proactive.
piece.
You can't just wait for people to reach out, because you're going to have, like, I'm one of those suck it up people. Like, if you don't know what's going on with me, you're not going to know about it. Like, unless you know to ask me or something like that, I might be pressured to open up about stuff, but for the most part, I think it's a largely male dominated field. Men often are wired that way, to like suck it up and deal with that type of stuff. And there's a lot of women like that too, but it's I don't know, I think there has to be like that proactive thing. So I love that you do that, so that you can also make sure you have multiple touch points or follow-up points that you're indicated to do, not to be reactive to it, but to put it out first.
And you have to be able to compartmentalize as well. But the problem is with our brains is that, and this is digging into the more like neuroscience portion of it, is that we bury things very easily and we don't always realize it. And then it comes up in different formats. So this is a portion of complex PTSD, right?
Okay.
So like, for example, I've had, trauma with dealing with a drowning of like a child. So like, something that I've compartmentalized is something like that, but then going after a few months later, you're not thinking about it, but then you see a child next to a pool, my brain thinks about it and is like, that child's going to die, like, so that's something that your brain is processing then. And now I'm going back into that trauma and thinking like, oh my gosh, I have to save that child. He's drowning, but they're not in any danger at all. But my brain, my whole body goes into the sympathetic state. That's going back into cortisol release and like stressful release. That's automatically reactive, which is not good for my body to constantly going back into these states, because then I have to recall myself. That's all trauma release,
So how, when you have these folks that you're consulting with, whether they're leaders or directly people who are impacted, how does your program work?
So it's sort of like bar rescue, right? Because every department is going to be different.
Okay.
But at the core of it is these three pillars.
What's bar rescue?
You know what bar rescue
am I missing a reference here?
Yeah. It's
like rescuing, like a bar that is sucking, and then like a Gordon Ramsay thing, but like a bar version of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's the Italian guy. I can't remember what his name is, but he screams all the time. Oh, you got to go see it now.
Okay. I don't really watch a lot of TV.
I actually don't like it because he screams all the time, but it is like the Gordon Ramsay version
of bars.
Okay. Of bars. Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, so it's basically that though, like the Gordon Ramsay version, whatever that one's called.
So you go in And you basically have a way that you assess, like a firehouse, a police station.
Because at the end of the day, there's always something that's at the core that's causing them to not be able to have a retention of their employees.
Okay. And do you get resistance? You must get resistance from this.
So the hardest is usually there's a miscommunication between, well, there's always miscommunication. That's why that there's having an issue, right?
Yeah.
But generally the chief and the union, there's always some tension.
Okay.
Right.
There should be. That's a natural thing.
Right. But
they're at odds. I mean, I think there's certain positions where I think they should be banging heads, and then you get hopefully a good result from that.
Right. Well, coming from someone that enjoys resolving conflict.
I was wondering why you were smiling. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, there's some healthy conflict that should be amongst them.
Sure.
But at the same time, generally it's not always so healthy. Sometimes it can be really terrible, right?
Yeah.
Like we're to the point where they're almost afraid. I've had some conversations where the chief is almost afraid to even present me as someone because they're afraid that no matter whom they present, the union is just going to hate it no matter what.
Right.
Just because it's from the chief. So like there does become almost some sort of toxic relationship where it's a pissing match back and forth, right?
That makes sense.
So there comes a point where you just have to come in and assess the issue, but it's a trust, right? So I have to go in and talk with the union and talk with the chief and just present really what it comes down to is there's 3 pillars. So we have the tactical performance reset, which really just ingrains the fact that there's a strong connection between the physical and the mental.
Okay.
So I'm also a personal trainer and holistic nutrition coach, but I also connected with a strength and conditioning coach. So we developed just a physical portion that helps mitigate injuries, but also stresses the importance of nutrition and physical.
Great.
And also adding in financial too, because that's a huge issue.
Wow.
So, the whole age-old saying that the more you make, the more you spend. So the problem is that, especially in Massachusetts, but throughout the nation, it's not always the case, but first responders can tend to make a decent amount of money depending on where you live, especially if you're working overtime. But if you are making more money, you are tending to spend a little bit more money. And sometimes first responders don't know how to really manage that much more money. Okay. And so if they are...
So what, you see that materialize eventually as another system, another
it's definitely another stressor, right?
Oh, interesting.
So we added in another element, which is a financial advisor that's free to them. I was
ask you that, yep.
So it's just another element that they can have as a resource.
Wow.
So, and also he helps them like for their children's college funds, or like if they ever want to add like our IRAs or anything of that nature to help teach them investments or anything that they want in the future, which is not something that we are really as a general population not taught, especially as first responders, because a lot of us are just thrown into the mixes.
Into not even just that, but also like even with the union mix that you're talking about, like a lot of people are promoted, like a lot of first responder institutions, promotion is, and you see this actually, this is actually probably an industry-wide type of thing. A lot of people get promoted into positions based on tenure. It's like, oh, this person's been here that long. You know what? Our union leader just retired or whatever. You've been here 10 years, you're next up. Where that is, and you see this at all sorts of companies. I see it in my industry a lot, and it's like, that is so irresponsible. You have so many people who do, even just the idea of like going to a supervisory or a managerial position, you do less day-to-day work, you do a lot more thinking, it's more cerebral, it's a lot more stress, because you're dealing with having these difficult conversations you always have to have with people. So not everyone's made for that. And just because you've been at a place for X amount of years doesn't mean that, you could have some, because it's a different way of thinking and it's a different type of stressor. Like how you're talking about, you can see a dead body. And for me, it would be like, holy shit, that's a dead body. You have some people that would be able to, even if they were only serving for like a few years, they might just naturally be a better person to work with leadership and manage folks and represent the union than someone who's been there for a while. So, but I know like institutionally, it happens a lot more based on how long you've been there. And nobody gets, I imagine, nobody serves in any of these roles like and drives to be part of any of these organizations to be a union rep. It's something that is like, oh, someone has to do this. who's going to do it? We have to deputize somebody to do this job, and they're now that person for X amount of time. And you know, it's not typically people's first responsibility, nor should it be. Your first focus is going to be on helping people, I would think.
You'd think that,
Yeah.
but not always the case.
Okay.
Yeah. So another portion of it is the leadership drive. So with that, another third. So I also have the mental health portion kind of woven into that. That's where we develop the mental health or work with whatever they have,
Okay.
which is what we were kind of talking about
Yeah.
with the critical incident management. But leading into what we were just talking about, the third and most important aspect of my program is the leadership development, because we do tend to do not necessarily promote because of tenure, but we promote in the first responder world task doers, right? So something that we have lost, and it's something that I've actually had a lot of conversations with. I just went to a recent conference for the International Association of Fire Chiefs down in Florida. And I wanted to really ask them as well, like the chiefs across the nation, to see if my own theory was correct, if we've kind of lost mentorship throughout the fire service.
Okay.
And it's kind of the general consensus as well that they also agree mentorship is kind of just, it's a huge portion of what the fire service is.
Yeah.
And it's been lost throughout the last, decade or so. Because we tend to basically develop task doers, right? They're very good at doing tasks. They're very good at taking tests. They're very great at passing the civil service exam.
Okay.
But we're not good at training them how to be leaders. So just because you are great at doing the civil service exam and great at, getting a degree from Columbia Southern University, right, doesn't mean you are great at becoming a lieutenant or a captain or, chief for that matter.
Yep.
So it doesn't make you a great leader, which is kind of what the predicament that we're in right now, because that's what's causing the burnout. You don't know how to communicate. You don't know how to have those hard conversations. This portion of my program is actually based a lot about, I don't know if you've ever heard of, he's a former Navy SEAL, Jocko Willink.
I don't think so, no.
The guys love him in the first responder world, of course, because he's a former military, but he stresses, and he has this program called the EO Academy, and he stresses something with leadership as relationships. So he has this thing called leadership capital, where you have to always be depositing into leadership capital, whether it's communication via text message, email. So you're always just depositing, whether it's just asking how someone is in conversation, getting to know someone. You don't have to be best friends with the people that you are in leadership over, but you do have to have good communication with them. You do have to have a relationship with them, because you are going to have to ask them to do things they're not going to want to do.
It's really true, because I remember like 10 years ago, I had this person that was running one of my departments, and I could always count on her. And so eventually I stopped doing like check-ins. We would still do like a yearly review, but even that, for the most part, she'd like kick butt. And then there was one yearly review where like a month or two afterwards, something traumatic happened in her personal life that she didn't share with me or anyone at the job. She drove her department into the ground unbeknownst to me. Like, so it was just tanking for probably like 2 or 3 months. And like, once I realized what happened, it was one of those, you immediately need to be terminated. It was like, she was just not competent, was hurting the company, like just torpedoed this whole department. I ended up having to deputize somebody else to build this thing back up from scratch, apologizing to clients, making sure I have those regular check-ins, like at least monthly. I'm touching base with people, because you don't know what else is happening in their life. Like how you were saying, it's not just what's even happening there. There's this whole other part of life in our personal world, which is sure as hell not any easier than dealing with work. Life is tough.
Right.
So you never know when someone's private life is falling apart too. Something traumatic happens to them, and how do you best, so that's why I love like things like FMLA and things like that, that you can have somebody take a break, take a time out, and take care of whatever it is that they're dealing with. They can stay compensated, keep their job, and be able to return to it. But, we have, how are we doing right now? Oh, we just hit 12 o'clock. There's like 1,000 things I meant to get to, and I knew we were going to run into this. Oh my God, I want to get to so many other things. So let me get to one more thing. I mean, I did really want to hit the whole assisted living facility fire that they had over there. You're familiar with that situation over in Fall River?
Yeah, I
somewhat?
know the bits and pieces.
Yeah, so I think it was like a 5-alarm fire. I think there were like 70 residents. 9 of them immediately were pronounced dead, and I think 1 later succumbed to injuries. Several firefighters got hurt. There was like 6 injured firefighters on that. And I think they were calling everybody like, get up, get your ass in here. We have a serious situation. And I don't know if I don't think they've even solved, they were saying, I think the source of it was either from an oxygen tank or potentially from some smoking materials. I don't know that they ever actually figured that out. But what you had was like every fire code had not been held up to standard. So you had things like blocked exits, an elevator that had not been working for a long time, just not checking in on like there's so many oxygen tanks there, and those can go. So, and all the checkpoints they weren't going up to. And credit to our governor, she has required every ALF in the state to now within 30 days report. So that must have already happened by now. Within 30 days, have like an assessment done and have that filed in. And I know there's an agency, because the thing is that assisted livings, they're not held up to the same standard as like skilled nursing facilities and a lot of other institutions. So they are much more of and this is like the check-in stuff again, that's important. And listen, I hate regulations. I hate regulatory bodies. But then something like this happens, and then the government has to come in and be like, you can't take care of crap, so here comes the red tape that you guys always hate.
Right.
And so they come in and they'll say like, so now, and I hope, I think there's some, I'm not going to comment on where we're at right now, because I think the agency that governs assisted living facility, it's not the Department of Public Health. It's a different agency that just deals with those folks. And I don't think they had much power. So I don't know, but it was like voluntary to report. There are no inspections there historically or any requirement like mandated things. It was just like, you should send in a report yearly of like a fire check for these type of things. So I imagine and hope that they get more power, and they'll be like doing surprise inspections like a lot of medical facilities have. But really, any facility should have that stuff, because that's how those things happen. Like those fires that have happened. Like I remember that nasty one in Providence, years ago, that nightclub fire where.
Well, the thing so for example, in the town that I used to work for, we had a fire prevention officer. So we had a paid fire prevention officer that would have a list. And I know specifically this too, because when I was on light duty, I had to help him develop like an actual scheduled list.
Yep.
Where he would then go around, scheduled yearly, and actually like on there was like the nursing homes and stuff. Or yearly he would have to go around and check off all of the required things of the state and all that, things. So
yeah,
it's like, what does Fall River have? Do they cut budgets? I know that they do cut a lot of budgets. So
it's the union saying this is the fault of the mayor.
Right. They cut the budget, so they don't have the staffing, and they don't pay for a fire prevention officer. And then that's
actually
the
Fall River mayor is someone I'm trying to reach out to too. I have to connect with him soon. Or no, not the mayor. There's someone that's running for mayor right now against, I think, the current mayor that might be coming on a show soon. But yeah, I think that's where like it went instantly into a fight with that. And like, so how, like, and I know like we already talked about this, but that would be something I would definitely need to bring up if I do get that gentleman in here about, I'm sure there's a lot to it, because no one's going around being like, I want to be under recommendations for these ladders. I want to have it at like half the amount of force that we are recommended to have. I'm sure no one's saying that. I'm sure there's certain reasons or whatever it is, or where they're allocating budgets. But I always do like to dig into that, because especially in politics, there are rats everywhere in politics. So it's like, is there something that's going on? And it's not just a Fall River thing. I mean, Fall River has had so many challenges. I feel like in the last 10 years, they've been in the spotlight for so many different things. But, you know, it's something that, like, I think normally people don't process, don't understand, like, what is the current level in your town or city. And I think it's, at least in Massachusetts, from what my research was, is that it's across the board understaffed massively. Like,
Yeah.
like that, having 2 to a ladder versus 4 is almost a standard. It seems like that, you know, everything is basically half
Right.
staffed.
Well, it's like, what are you paying for, right? Like I said in the very beginning, you're going to be paying for something. So what are you investing in? So like, are you going to have a budget for wellness, or are you going to staff more people? Because if you staff more people, then you're going to mitigate the burnout, because you don't understand that the burnout is actually coming from the day-to-day activities of shit
Yeah.
that's going on, because
Yeah.
you're forcing them to overwork.
Yep.
You're forcing their bodies to the extreme.
Yeah.
You're forcing them to eat like shit and to not sleep, and you're forcing them
Oh my God.
into just like rearranging their schedules all the time, to
Yeah.
forcing into hours they don't want to do, to have these conversations with their spouses that they don't want to have, to miss out on things for their children.
Yeah,
Like,
they're
those
getting
are the
shit in
day-to-day
every
shit.
direction.
Right. It's not the random DOAs that they go to every few months or once a year or whatever. It's the day-to-day shit that they have to get forced into, because you don't want to pay for an extra couple of bodies that they're just getting paid. Well, they're like, oh, well, you know, I'm getting paid overtime, you know, but that doesn't matter, because they're missing their, you know, child's first horseback riding competition or something, you know, like, so.
Yeah. I think that is probably the best thing that's been said on this whole show here. That was an amazingly well said. And I've always thought, like, I used to have overtime at my place too, and then, but that it's a killer to the budget. And so I would always look at overtime as like a failure of staffing personally. I know that most people in towns don't want to pay double. You know, they see like the officer on the side of the road and they're just like, that guy could be replaced by an orange cone. Or if it's in a particularly difficult traffic zone, it's like, why is that an overtime situation? Why can't we have better staffing? Because it's literally, I think, double time that they make or something like that. So it's, and you're right, from the mindset, even if somebody does want to earn an extra buck, it's better, it's better for them to have some kind of priority going to mental health. There has to be a better conversation and more attention given to it. I'll give you the last word here. If you have anything else that you want to put out there about what it is that you're doing, you can plug your band. You can plug what it is that you're doing. Like, where would people go if they need to? Let's say, because I'm sure we have some first responders watching. We don't have any comments, so if anyone's on YouTube, throw your comment in now if you want to get a response. But like, so for any folks who are first responders who are either working as at the entry level or all the way up to the chief level, what would you say to them?
So I do have a few different programs. I have the Frontline Resilience Protocol, which is the department level. So that incorporates the police and fire departments with quarterly leadership check-ins. That's the follow-up that I was talking about. That is the most important when it comes to department as a whole and trying to transform the culture. And then I also have the one-to-ones, which if you're a first responder that wants to learn how to mitigate burnout and kind of reset your nervous system at a individual level and learn how to do it while you're still amidst kind of the whole chaos of the job, I do that as well. And then if you're not a first responder either, but still want to learn how to do burnout mitigation or learn how to deal with the stressors of life in general, all of this can be found on my website, which is waywardwellnesscoaching.org, or any of the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, any of that nature. And if you just want to de-stress and have nothing to do with stress, burnout, or any of that stuff, you can go find my band in South Shore, Massachusetts.
Yep.
Or online as well.
Do you have a website for the band?
Yeah, the band is reneeandband.com.
And Renae is R-E-N-E.
RENEANN band, or the social medias as well. Facebook and Instagram.
Do you still do nutritionist stuff? Can you do nutritionist stuff?
Yeah, I can also do, physical strength training and nutrition as well. That's all incorporated into my program. I'm actually going to be coming out with a course that's kind of a mix between confident communication, like getting rid of your self-talk, negative self-talk, and mixed with kind of
God.
nervous
I
system
think I need to sign up
regulation.
for that.
So that's in the development and coming out with an email list. So that'll be coming out. So you can follow me on the social medias if you want to learn more about that as well. But that's in the works right now in the moment.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you for all your service. In addition to coming here as a guest, thank you to all the service folks that are out there. I have a lot of respect. I was raised by a firefighter, and I certainly have a lot of respect for the folks who serve us, all the public servants out there. So thank you very much for coming here. I really
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
All right. Next week is in flux. We had a dropout, so we've got a couple people that we're trying to line up. So stay in touch with the socials. I know in a couple weeks we have Don Corey, who is also doing like coaching, but in a very different way than Renae. And just, we're going to keep at it to bring people in who are doing things that you might not realize are available out there. And it's a lot of good stuff. So more to learn here. Last look for comments, no comments. All right, guys, we will see you next week.